What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Perniga bringing you another cast over. This time we're going to be looking at the Shambler against Neblime, and I'd say these guys could be upper finals or grand finals favorites, or at least, they are players who could conceivably reach that far. So we're going to have to check them out on Instagram. JK, they don't have one as far as I know. We're going to go to Highwater for this, and we have vertical spawns. Interesting. So this is a match that was played before the tournament between the Shambler and Neblime. Neblime is going to be the dark green Terran in the bottom right, and the brass Zerg in the top right. That is the Shambler. Vertical spawns on Highwater definitely allows you to do some drop play or air rushes, and there are certain air units right now, specifically for Zerg, I would say in very high quantities. The Skithracore can be quite overpowering. If you look at the Calculus, it seems really, really strong right now, and it's sort of been a revelation on the tournament patch where nobody was building them prior to the tournament really beginning. And then, I think in the build-up to Ascension number 6, we had a couple of people try them out and determine, holy shit, these are really good, especially versus Mutas and ZVZ. So that's a particular case where you might see them. Now, versus Terran, I'm not sure that they're going to be as popular, but maybe we'll see them in this particular match. Otherwise, though, Mutalisks are the go-to. Obviously, they force out Valkyries or some other form of splash. Cyprians do penetrate them, so you can get bopped by that, but it's a question of whether or not that's even going to get that far, right? I mean, we've got 3 games here to cast on this one map. I believe they were just practicing because they suspected that this map would be added, or maybe it was confirmed by then. This was played, I think, just a day or so before the tournament patch was shipped. So, and it was shipped on the day of the group stage, I believe, as far as I remember, or maybe the day before. So, getting our timelines in order, we do have a double stockade opener here, and both of our players scouting in the wrong direction. There will not be a cross scout. It looks like Shambler actually kind of got baited because he went to the... he didn't go to the main, right? And actually, I think the same thing is true for Neblime. He did not go all the way up there to confirm the position. So I believe he's suspecting that he would have seen Shambler already expand or something. He would have seen some signs of life, some evidence. So it's kind of interesting there. And recently, I've seen Neblime take a Maverick and stim it across the map before, although not necessarily versus Zerg. I think that's more of a TVT thing that he's done in a few particular matchups. So, as a result, maybe he'll be doing that here. But I'm looking at the way that his focus, it seems to be just on his ramp. He's setting up rallies and camera hockeys probably. He's seeing what's up. So yeah, he's pathing directly to the natural with this worker, and I think he just now realized, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, okay, I guess they were organizing a play to have the blind play against Hamster, but instead it was, of course, he who shambles. It was the Shambler. He has his in-base hatch, which is very Hamster-esque. He has his Quaseth pool, also fairly Hamster-esque. And I'm interested in seeing these guys. I was looking around for players who could conceivably get to the top of the tournament standings in Ascension 6 and then bring you guys a cast over of that so it's relevant to the fact that we have, tomorrow after this video goes live, we have Saturday's games, Playoffs Round 2 happening. And then ideally I'll have, more cast overs that are also relevant to that sort of thing. Because, in a super ideal world, we'll just continuously see stuff like that. So the Mason does end up confirming that a Droleth is heading to the natural expansion. If Neblime was watching that, he will have known, oh, okay, my opponent is going to be expanding. If he wasn't paying attention, then he won't see a hatch, mutating over here. So that kind of tells you all you need to know where he's... oh, I guess he went random. Interesting. Well, he got Terran anyway, so it's fine. I see. Yeah, Neblime's a cool guy. He likes to help people practice up before a match or before a setup here. But he got the 1 out of 3 roll. So there are Nathracores on the way, but there's a Watchdog already here because of the Scout. Neblime paying attention to that sort of thing. He kills the Worker, and he's going to go ahead and move out with 3 Clerics and a handful of Mavericks. He's got more Clerics and Mavericks coming out of his Stockade. The double Nath movement is just going to be stymied by the single Watchdog. And there's another pair coming, which, you can start to get a little bit scarier, but yikes. Nathracores end up just getting bopped anyway. So when you lose the first one, you're absolutely not really going to be able to pressure. Maybe the second pair can come in and start doing a little bit of heckling to the Maverick. But at this point, there's more coming. There's a Cleric here for healing. He's just going to go ahead and stim the Maverick back and stim the other one forward. He's going to try to defend his natural as the Mason starts to run away. And it looks like Shambler's being a little bit lax here, not really paying attention. So the little runaround dance is going to occur. And, I think he was planning on sending a healthier Mason. No, he drilled to the ridge and then allowed it to return. So he's actually not currently making his ministry. And that is well, if you watch the games against 3 Crow, then you'll actually know. Camping the eggs of the natural is a really, really big deal. That's going to split the forces here. We have some Quasis. We have some Gnats. I think Shambler is in a little bit of trouble here. He might want to try to, like, pop around the extremities. He's actually... It looked like he was trying to decollide the Mavericks or whatever, but manages to escape with Gnat, of course. He's just trying to use the... He's just trying to use the situation here that the Hatrosk has a limited set of production. A Mason has also arrived to aggressively attack the Hatrosk, but as he gets there... it's gone. That's it. So he's going to go ahead and he's scouting. He's scouting, guys. At this point, Neblime is pretty far ahead in the macro department. He did end up resuming his ministry. He's adding an anchor, adding a star pad, and a second watchdog in case of some sort of air attack. Quasis are going to try to use the cliff advantage to get a little bit of heckling done, but it looks like they only successfully tickle 2 separate Mavericks to death. And we just have those 2 separate larvae up there, and they are indeed separate. They are turning into Droleths. And of course, you can build over eggs, but it looks like they wandered away, so that's not even going to be showcased here. Yeah, in CMBW, you don't block your building placement with larvae or units or eggs or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and remake it. He could drop a couple Kagrants over here. It doesn't seem like that's going to be of a massive concern for him. He's moving out with his Quasi army, which of course afforded by the fact that he had the double Hatrosk here. His Nathakors are now patrolling for any air units. Instead of a Wraith, it's going to be an Anseal. That will be useful. Mostly for scouting, but also for protecting against the... It sounds weird to say that you can burst with Quasis, but you can kind of burst with them if they all target the same thing. So Anseals are kind of conceptually anti-burst, while Clerics are more like anti-low damage because they sustain through it, or they help you sustain through it. And the Shamans are kind of like that, but for a wider area, but less concentrated healing. So the Clerics will just heal one target sometimes, and the Shamans heal everybody. That's sort of like the idea. So Terran has a nice spread of protection/healing defensive options for, you know, keeping units alive in the middle of combat. There are a lot of Quasilisks, and only one of these anchors actually has anything in it. And the rest of his army is gathered over here anticipating some kind of airdrop. So that's a little bit worrisome. He is going to scout a third hatch going up in the main. There is no natural just yet, and the Quasis are kind of scattering all over the place. 18 of them are going to come in here, but just as they do so, Cyprians start to get shuffled into the anchors. And I feel like this is a really strong position for Neblime to be in, but he is ceding map control. He did not want to, you know, stand and fight using the cliff advantage. This tile does give you cliff advantage in Cosmonarchy Brood War, so he didn't want to stand here and use that. And by the way, if you guys are super new to the project, then you may know that cliff advantage gives you +2 weapon range instead of having a random chance to miss. So it's an advantage for the attacker as opposed to a disadvantage for the defender. I mean, technically, the fact that your attacker has well, it's not even a defender or attacker thing. What I meant to say is it's an advantage for the unit on the high ground as opposed to a disadvantage for the unit on the low ground. Although technically, of course, it is quite a disadvantage to have less range. But you guys get the idea. I'm buffing the unit on there and instead of nerfing the unit underneath. So there's definitely some tickling happening. The Anseal is being pursued viciously by the Nathakors, which can keep up with it. So that will be a GG Anseal. See you later, nerd. He could have maybe moved over here again to get a bead on how many workers there were. But honestly, Shambler's in a spot where he's recovered very, very well from the early damage. He has the same level of workers just about. Atlas is on the way, of course, much faster than an Iral Iris could be accrued. And it's only now going to go down somewhere. Yeah, right next to the Quazeth. So that's it's going to be a little bit late. I mean, Terran's always a little bit early, but this is a bit more early than you would expect. And we even have a Trojan here as a Fulcrum is going down. When you see one Fulcrum and everything else is bio, you kind of assume this is going to be a Madrigal drop. And Neblime loves himself some Madrigals. Again, this is the last tournament that he's going to be able to use them in the same degree. He was pretty vocal about them being reduced in terms of power. But, you know, we're fine-tuning the revision to it. If you're curious about that, you can check out pre-release as I speak about that. That's also where the new Drakadin is, which is going to receive some updates and some improvements, but for now, we just have what we have. Oh yeah, I forgot my dog is here. Surprise dog. Sponsored dog? Is there a sponsored dog segment? Can we do that? We have a lot of Nathakors pooling up over here. I feel like with the Zorkish Shroud coming and the Iral Iris just about to pop, we might actually see Calculus Gorgor Core or something like that. The Quasis are going to go ahead and charge forward. I don't know why. I feel like this is a grievous error. Oh, it's because the Sentinels just destroyed them, and they weren't on hold position. I was really perplexed by that one. So there's an attempted drop here. It's just I got an Achmed and 2 Mavericks in it. So the Trojan will get bopped. That is a little bit of a setback in terms of it's going to take a while for another Trojan to pop out. Palladium coming. that is going to, again, I assume, just coincide with that. We do have some Eidolons in the mix. So I think neblime is like practicing whether or not Eidolons can be useful. We actually saw Mystery Meat do this versus the Beaver in the quarterfinal number 1 of Ascension 6. So I feel like when we look at something like that, we think, oh, okay, people are practicing some of the new stuff, right? This is proximity cloak Eidolons. These ones don't decloak unless you get close to them. And hopefully, as a result, we'll finally see them being used. Although I think they were always pretty interestingly useful. It's just they were useful as a combat unit more, first and foremost. And, you know, at this level of skill, maybe players aren't quite on their A game regarding clerics and spinning. No, but obviously regarding spotting the units and getting nuked by them. I actually feel like Eidolons can get some pretty sneaky nukes off because for a while, everybody, the meta has been, hey, I'm just going to make a lot of Seraphs and nuke you with Seraphs because the science vessel in CMBW has been completely revised and can launch nuclear strikes. So as a result of that, you can use them with air units. It's like, oh, I can nuke you from ways that your ground army can't attack, or I can nuke you from areas where you're just not expecting a nuke to come down. And this is an interesting swath of tech options here that I'll comment on very briefly. We do have Calculusks coming, but the Mutath Spire is already here as well. So the Zorkish Shroud, we have an Irilith mutating. Like, I'm curious as to what Shambler is. He's getting a little bit of everything. And the Anciel is like, hey, what's up, guys? And I don't know exactly why he would tempt fate here, but it looks like Shambler is going to lose an Athacor for it. At this stage, this is not the level of efficiency you really want. Calculusks are being mutated. It's a storm of them, guys. Like, this is really, really spooky. With the Calculusks in mind, you really want Imperioso instead, but it looks like it's dealing a little bit of damage to the Calculusks. I don't know, like the fact that they have 7 range means they can outrange the Madrigal. So you want Imperioso mode, which has 8 range, you can outrange them. So currently, pretty much everything has been absolutely destroyed. We have some Eidolons lying around over here that could also help. The Covenant's being attempted to be focused down. And yeah, this is what the Calculusks can do. When you deploy them into Furia mode, they just walk away. More Calculusks coming in. This is a little bit awkward, but one of them does end up, one of the Madrigals does end up going down. We have a Maverick and a Cyprian firing shots at it. The units from downtown. The Eidolons are also here. The Eidolons are going to be huge at dealing a lot of damage over here, but unfortunately, the base is kind of in flames. And this is where I'm not really sure what neblime is doing in the middle of all this. I think he lost track of his own Eidolons because, they're cloaked, and he's green, and he's on jungle map. What the hell's going on here? Well, it turns out that's not so good, right? So right now, pretty much everything he's got is getting absolutely lit up. The Palladium was dead. The Watchdog was interrupted. His Covenants have been destroyed as well. And, this is an expensive army, but I think it definitely paid for itself. Now, we do have Quasis coming, and the Anchor was destroyed, but there's a lot of Harakans. I don't know about this situation. I feel like when you just station the Eidolons on this cliff and you repair the Sentinel, you're probably going to be just fine. The follow-up not being air might be a little bit confusing, but we do have Gorgorkors on the way. And it looks like the Irilith was just here to mute, sort of shuffle some of the advanced defenses around the map. We do have Harakans that were sent up here to cleanse out that top left base, so that's going to be a little bit of a dub. In the meantime, of course, this base was heckled at some point, but for the most part seems to be okay besides all the idle workers, and neblime is taking a 4th at that 630 position. And he does investigate up here, but there's still a bunch of Quasis. Of course, there's a Sentinel over here. Yeah, I think at this point, when you consider the 530 position where neblime took his 3rd, he's actually in a pretty commanding position in that area, but he's losing all of his Eidolons to Quasilisks because he moved a little bit too far forward there, and that is absolutely going to be cost efficient. These guys are 75 of each resource, so you definitely don't want to just be losing a bunch of them right now. You can see how much damage even 2 of them are going to be able to do to something like a Zoryusleth. We do also have a Madcap out, which means, in theory, we can end up going for Apostles in the later stages of the game. Repairs are being made to save the Burning Stockade. More and more Watchdogs have been added. We do have a bunch of Gorgorkors. Now, Gorgorkors don't do super well against a Mass Watchdog. Sort of an interesting development in that respect, and we have a Madrigal coming. It's probably not going to be here in time. We have Gosvalets out, the advanced worker for the Zerg. I think Shambler might be looking to take the middle base, or at the very least, he's sort of moving all of his units around and expanding outwards in the rest stages of the map. I think on Forspawn maps, we should see advanced workers be used a little bit more often. And we have a starport coming, 2 starports, in fact, coming for neblime. Now, the Gorgorkors are here. They are here in quite a large amount of, large number. We have 13 of them. They're going to be going after the workers, but going against neblime, I can tell you, I don't actually know if that really makes a huge difference. I think this is another spot, by the way, where you could have gone for Imperioso Missile instead of Furia. Now, there's not really much to respond to here. We do have an Anvil with nukes. We know that neblime is a big fan of that. It's actually going to be targeted down, but I don't actually think it's going to be killed. There's only 6 of them left, and they're falling. Neblime's not paying attention or repairing it. He's going to start now. I think he's going to be in the clear. That was really close, because if he didn't repair it, it absolutely would have fallen. But the Eidolons and the Madcaps showing their worth there, muscling down that Gorger core count. And even with all the worker kills, right, Neblime is still only barely behind. Now, that being said, we do have 22 Mutalisks out. And Mutalisks can absolutely dive on things like Madrigals, things like, you know, Cyprians and Anchors. He's got 1 Huracan in each one of these Anchors. I wonder what that's a response to. It seems oddly specific. Now, the Eidolon does reveal that and is going to get bopped for it. So at the very least, there's some forewarning of what's happening over here. But the Madrigal needs to be mass repaired as it's still dishing out an unbelievable amount of damage to the Mutalisks. However, I think that might be enough because a lot of them are bruised, but there's still 19 of them left, and the Eidolons are all off to the side doing something else, right? We have Starports up but no Valkyries. I feel like Neblime has just been overwhelmed, and Shambler has been put in a situation where he initially lost his natural, but he held on, and there was no further pressure from Neblime. Neblime definitely needed to manage the Zerg in that whole time. He kind of managed them with, you know, stuff to the top left, and the whole left side of the map hasn't actually been used right now. But vertical spawns should probably clue you into the idea that mass air could definitely be an option. It didn't really, I think if Madrigals had held on with Imperioso mode instead of Furia mode there, where you need to take advantage of your range, the only way you get a range advantage on Calculusks in that first air engagement, I think that would have helped him out massively. But unfortunately for Neblime, he did not respond quite so fruitfully there. He's adding on rotaries. Maybe this is for salamanders as opposed to... unfortunately, he's got like masons all over the place, just sort of like idling and blocking his Madrigals. So if he wants to move those around, he's in a bit of a rough spot. Now we do have... Okay, we just have like a spattering of random units here. We have 28 mutas coming. There's a Madrigal over here trying to garrison this situation, but the Watchdogs are kind of far away. And the other Madrigal, I don't even know, maybe it finally made it out, but there's a bunch of Quasis have charged up the ramp, and there was only the 1 Sentinel, which seems to have been destroyed by the mutas earlier in the attack anyway. I think at this point there's just a multi-pronged attack with the ground army taking out the 3rd, and the main being absolutely supplanted by only muta, and that will give the Shambler the first dub in this set of 3 games. And you know what? I think that was a pretty solid match. We got to see a bunch of different things there between the Terran doing a little bit of early aggro, the Zerg failing to that initially, but then the Terran sort of capitulating or conceding all of that space again, and just... Neblime likes his macro style, but he's not super, you know, adequate at pressuring, it seems. Like, if you can get him... We saw a couple of attempts with the Trojans in the early stages of that, like as the game went into mid-game with the tier 2 tech on the way and stuff. But it was just like almost instantaneously thwarted by all of those Nathracors proactively placed there by Shambler. So an interesting match. I still think Neblime could have pulled through, but it's just a stack of sort of like he didn't apply too much pressure, but then he didn't also go for a tried and true army method, right? He went for an experimental army method with the Eidolons, and if they were in the right positions, then they would have been great. But there was no like forward scouting, so he didn't really know when the Calculusks were coming. And when they did arrive, they arrived in such a mass that it was really difficult for him to actually deal with them. You imagine that fight going a little bit differently if either we got Imperiosa missiles from those Madrigals, or we have those Eidolons just peppering them with 15 damage a pop every single shot, like all the time. So either one of those would have been great. Unfortunately, Neblime doesn't end up doing them, and he couldn't snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat after all. Shambler takes the game. Let's see what's up next. The Shambler, Neblime, Game 2 on Highwater again. Let's go. We have Neblime in the top right as the Terran. He is the Royal Blue Terran, on the Royal Road, perhaps, going up against the Shambler, who is bog standard green. Although I feel like green might have been one of the colors that DF updated. He updated blue, default blue, and he might have updated one or two other colors along the way. So they look a little bit better in CMBW than they do in the default game. Anyway, we do have these 2 players cross spawns now, so maybe less air shenanigans. And not really too much to say about the role that the map played in that particular engagement. Like I mentioned in that last cast, when we look at it the way that we normally look at it, we think of vertical spawns, and even in like stock Starcraft, you kind of think, oh, maybe a lot of air dominance could happen. But in this project and this patch, definitely air units are a factor. And we're actually seeing Calculusks end up being pretty successful, although I think it was kind of overblown by Neblime not immediately responding to it in a way that he kind of treated them like mutas when he was thinking, oh yeah, I'll just deploy these Madrigals in Furia mode. But Calculusks have way more range than Mutalisks. So when you're thinking about it in that context, it suddenly becomes a little bit clearer, I think. Now, all that being said, Shambler obviously did capitulate his expansion in the early stages of the game in I'd say it was unexpected amounts of Terran aggression with Bio, where it was a move out of like sub 12 units, and it was more than enough to deal with the Zerg in that moment. So a macro hatch in the base that ultimately ended up saving him because he built so many additional units that he kind of forced Neblime to be a little bit more defensive in the mid game. We'll have to see if that ends up happening again. Now, that being said, our players are scouting each other the wrong way, but they're scouting in the same direction to each other. They're scouting to the bottom right, which means they will find each other second, each time. Especially if Neblime pays attention to this worker scout, he can actually save himself a little bit of time. Because when he sees that at this timing, he can probably be like, okay, that's probably not, Shambler's scout timing. He's probably a little bit faster than that. But he decides to not do that. He goes all the way there and sees, okay, there's no Kager here. I'm out. Kager, by the way, our name for creep. Yes, we even renamed creep. It's the Kagrant Cesiant. Well, we don't have one right now, so I can't show you, but Kagrant means Kagra. Duh. Come on, everybody knows that. Now, there is going to be an expansion off of the 2 Mavericks, and there's no gas being harvested, so even though this Quasith pool is only halfway done, we probably wouldn't expect Nathricor first as an option. Now, the Droleth is going to pop in here, and it's not actually going to see the Ministry, right? If you deliberately path directly to the main, you aren't actually going to spot anything as far as the natural is concerned. Now, when Shambler walks in there and doesn't actually see any production structures, I mean, he knows there's a stockade because he got shot by Mavericks, but other than that, he has no real clue about what could be there. I wonder what Shambler is thinking about a potential response here. Now, the Mason's going to scout, now sees gas being mined, now sees the Quasith pool, and I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing a couple of Nats after all. But we're going to have to wait and see what he ends up doing. He's just shy of getting enough Vespene for it. If that is, in fact, what he wants. It's going to be Quasis, at least first. He also has enough money to go for an expansion, which he will be doing. But he's putting his hatch down at the same time as the Ministry is like nearly complete, right? 75% done at least. So, by the way, eventually we will have an update to this UI where it actually tells you how many seconds are left in the build time. And you'll see that. Your enemy will see that if they have detection, and you will see that as a replay or live viewer, witness viewer as well. So it's going to be beautiful when we do manage to wrangle that. There's some functionality, some hooks, if you're familiar with that term, some functions that I need to clean up internally, and then we should be able to add that functionality at a later date. Starpad coming for Neblime, essentially a repository for Tier 1 Terran Air. And he's going to be using that for the Anseal for detection and scouting, the Wraith if he wants to do some harassment, or the Trojan dropship if he wants to do some drops for also harassment, you would think. Neblime is a pretty drop-heavy player as Terran, and in a way that makes me feel very happy because I love drops. But the way that he usually does them is kind of like halfway between a player who doesn't do any drops and a player who's like me and probably drops too much. I just love drops. I love to do it. And he seems to also appreciate doing that, but when he does it, it's a little... I don't know about that one, Shambler. You probably could have walked forward and at least scouted that there was an anchor there, but now he doesn't see that. He unsmiley faces. He's got a bunch of Quasis guarding his choke, and he's only now going to be starting to saturate. No, he's not. He's actually a little bit, maybe he's a little bit scared. He's building a Kagrant there, and that is, of course, going to allow him to make that into a defense. The Mavericks are going to march across the map, but I feel like they're just going to die to the Quasis. So I don't even know if he needs the Kagrant right now, but he feels like maybe there's that uncertainty. He lost his expansion in the first match of this set, and now he doesn't want that to happen again. But there's much less investment coming out of Neblime. He's built way, way less Mavericks. And as a result, he's adding more stockade. So he still wants to go bio. I think maybe he probably wants to try that Eidolon strat again. But he's not harvesting gas, so he's going to be a little bit, delayed in terms of his ability to tech up. It looks like maybe he's going to be fomenting a Hurakan drop. Firebats in CMBW are called Hurakans, and they are way more powerful than... you would expect from the unit in the baseline. Now, the Nathricors fly in, 50 gas, 75 minerals, and all they really scout is that there's a Starpad bog standard. They don't make it up far enough to see these Trojans. They've got very limited sight range. And look at this. He's even welding out the stim. Yeah, repairing the stim damage. Love to see that. We got, four stockades, and here's the Hurakan. So the key detail about the Hurakan compared to Starcraft 1... Oh, the Anseal's getting butchered. Ugh, hunted down and destroyed. That's a lot of gas. That's 75 gas. But yeah, the Hurakan is a fairly interesting unit because when it attacks, it applies an armor rend, which makes subsequent attacks deal more damage, which makes, everything else, including like Mavericks that have 0 armor pen natively, more useful as a result. And it looks like some Mavericks are even being added to this potential drop. He's adding a second one, so this is a very committed attack. We do have more Nathricors on the way, and now that there's double Watchdog, maybe they can... you know, be zoned away a little bit faster. He's going to try to use the Mavericks. He really doesn't want this to be scouted. So he wants to know, like, where they're coming from. He's got double Watchdog in his natural as well. And more Nathricors are being added to the pool. I feel like at this point, ooh, getting hunted down by stimmed Mavericks as well. That's a little bit awkward. There's one of them that's just going to idle up here, it looks like, and maybe regroup with the 4. Yeah, there's Quasis in a couple of spots. Okay, so, like, Shambler's aware that, like, hey, you've got a star pad. You only built an Ancial. I haven't seen any Wraiths. Like, what are you up to? Is it really you invested 175 gas, because star pads are 100 gas now, into scouting me, and that was it? He knows that something must be up, right? He kind of understands the way that neblime thinks. It's actually just Hurricanes, by the way. Hilariously enough, we have 8 Hurricanes, make it 10 Hurricanes in these 3 Trojans. They can hold up to 16, and I have a feeling that that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, if he doesn't, like... Oh, he's actually adding a 4th Trojan. He's really committed to this. And it's only minerals. So in theory, he can still be doing okay. We've got, you know, 5 hatch situation here for Shambler pretty soon. He's got a Zorkish Shroud, so we might even see Lakizilisks to defend against this kind of thing. But does he know it's happening? Does he know it's coming? That's the real question. We might. I would like to see a couple of Mavericks added in. It looks like they are indeed going to. So there you go. I was thinking, you know, you want a couple of Mavericks because you're adding so much value to the Trojans in that sense, or to the drops, I should say. There's one of these Trojans is completely empty, and unfortunately he never poked up here, so he will end up. I think it might be on hold position, and Shambler did not move his camera over here, so I don't know if he paid attention to that. Oh dear. My dog adjusts his position on the bed in fear. Yeah, this is going to bypass the... Well, it might bypass the Nathricor sight range, depending on what happens. No, they went a little bit. So there's a second opportunity for Shambler to realize, hey, my base is about to get dropped. He's still... Like, at this point, right? The neblime has flown over the Quasilisk, 2 Nathricors, and Shambler just hasn't paid any attention. He's adding Kagrants now. So maybe he did sort of see it, or maybe he just senses it. But his Nats are not swarming around. Okay, now they're going to go ahead and investigate. But they're going to see 4 Trojans, right? Like, that's really scary. The Ancial's not coming with. Here comes the unload. Again, there's only a couple of Mavericks here, so the Nathricors can be pretty useful, especially with the Ancial not providing any sort of shielding. And the Mavericks are indeed going to be destroyed before anything else. So we do have a Circuit mutating. That's going to be made short work of. And the Hurricanes are tanky enough that they're going to take so long for the Nathricors to do anything too. The main hatch is destroyed. The Zorkis is destroyed. There is no Iral coming. And that... I mean, I don't know if it did enough damage, to be honest. Like, I think it was actually pretty ineffective in all told. I mean, okay, you killed the Zorkis. That's probably the most consequential situation there, because there's a hatch over here that you can return to for at limited efficiency. And a bunch of Mavericks are stimming, but they're on a move command. neblime has to stim it. Okay, his reaction time's pretty good, but he's up against Zorius. Like, Mavericks do not do very good against Zorius. There's going to be a pincer attack with more Mavericks stimmed. They're going to wipe out all of the range damage from the Quasilisks, and that's absolutely going to be impactful. But at this point, they're just going to suffer a slow demise. Some focus firing is good. That's always good. But there's a low HP Zorius down here on the bottom, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be the one to target. So that will just be a very slow demise, as every time you attack a Zorius, it spawns a Riller core after a delay. So it can't, like, stack that effect. It's like it has to not be in the middle of incubating. That's that green overlay that pops up on them. And finally, some Hurricanes will put an end to that because, again, of the aforementioned armor rend. Now, do we have a tier 2 coming? We do. It's already done, in fact. Starports are on the way. Double Palladium is surely in our future. And another drop is going to be Fomented. But there's a horde of Nathricors here, and there's not really any protection from this yet, right? We don't have any Madrigals yet. So what is his reaction going to be? He just sees 2, and he probably thinks, yeah, that's fine. He has no idea that there's 13 more right above there. So he cancels the 1 starport, and he doesn't have any Mavericks coming. He really needs to start making some. He has got plenty of money, so... More Hurricanes going to move across the map. Quasilisk's also moving across the map. A Watchdog does get shuffled over. And that one, I think, was... that looks like it was a cancel, considering it was not being attacked at the time. Madrigal on the way. No cancel on that second Watchdog, but that's not going to matter too much. Another Watchdog going to be finished. Some stimmed Mavericks coming in to deal some damage, and this was forcibly targeted, interestingly enough. Now here comes another drop. This one has a Goliath with it, and there's not nearly as many things. The Iral Iris is about to finish, but that's about it. And all of the tech that can be upgraded is just the Quasith pool, right? Trojans are going to retreat, so they're going to get out of the fight, which is good because they can be reused. And the Iral Iris is actually going to be targeted by a whole host of Hurricanes. Oh my god, the Iris is destroyed before it can be used. The Calcure Pond mutation is the only thing that Shambler was able to get off. He did not build any tech anywhere else, and I think it's just going to get destroyed as well. It is, and that is also going to result in the death of his main. This time, it was a follow-up drop facilitated in part by the fact that the first drop did weaken the situation and force Shambler into a feeling like he had to respond, even though ultimately it didn't really feel like he was that far behind. So the secondary hatch is dead, the primary hatch that was rebuilt is also dead, and now this one is much worse to return to. There's also the factor that, like, okay, never mind. I was going to say if those clerics stayed alive and healed the Goliath, this could end up being picked off, because the Goliath has so much armor and so much health, but it's not really going to be the case. I mean, they're kind of spinning after a Huracan that's being healed, which is a little bit bad for the Goliath, because the Goliath could be receiving these heals. It looks like it's going to be a little bit too late there, though. And yeah, that was, you know, if that was micromanaged a little bit better, that could have been good. There was the suicide of the March of the Huracans up here. They killed some workers on the gas, forced out some defenses. Definitely in a better position. And look, it's just another Huracan drop. Like, listen, you can build air units if you want to try to counter my Ahmeds, but I'm just going to keep raining them down from the sky. What an interesting game. A very novel approach. 2 base Huracan drop with a couple of Goliaths and Clerics every now and then, as well as like 3 Mavericks in the earliest stages. Is he just going to drop on here, or is he just going to bypass this entirely? Hydrith Den on the way. Zorka Shroud on the way. He cannot build any additional combat units. So if this ends up going the way that I think it will, and the Zorkas is killed, and the Hydrith is killed, like, he needs to spend his money now, and I don't think he is. He doesn't have anything coming. Okay, just narrowly, he ends up queuing some Izira cores right before it blows up. He's got 9 of them coming? Maybe 12 up here? Yeah. And he just rage quits. Ahmed made him rage quit. 0 GGs. And now it's no longer 0 for Neblime. Dude, this is a funny set. I'm happy that this ended up getting submitted. All right, well, we got one more game, so let's see what happens. All right, boys, we got one last match between Neblime and the Shambler, once again on Highwater, as they're trying to familiarize themselves with the positions. And this time it will be, once again, vertical spawns, but this time Neblime is on the top. Beastra Brown Terran in the top right, against Midnight Green in the bottom right. That is the Zerg of the Shambler. And apparently Neblime was thinking of his Grand Finals Game 3 against Mystery Meat, reflecting on his analysis. Yeah, excuse me. One of the things, right? Like, the double Didact into recall play it can be pretty terrifying. I think, considering how much of an expensive investment it is, the other thing that you can do is you can kind of be proactive, because the way that I saw that match, a brief sort of discussion of that match since they're talking about it, the army moves into one spot and stops being proactive at all, right? Now, a good Protoss player will like try to poke and prod on the extremities and stuff and keep you guessing while they're also doing the Didact thing. And they're trying to manage it and all that stuff. So I'm interested in seeing that, you know, if there's a rematch here. Oh yeah, they're talking a little bit about group stages because it hasn't been played yet. This is kind of interesting. Hamster did indeed take a game off of Mist, but it was a clawback after that. Mystery Me was able to force Hamster out in second place. Yeah, Neblime saying Hamster is probably better than himself. Well, there was that 7-game series on Sideshow where Hamster ended up clutching it out 4-3. Anyway, enough talking about the other stuff. I appreciate Neblime thinking a little bit, reflecting on his play, wondering what he might be able to do. There were definitely some novel tactics had by Mystery Meat. I liked that Mystery Meat actually, like, straight up planned a build specifically to counter the Wraiths, thinking that, you know, Neblime was definitely going to get bopped there. It was also kind of funny to hear that Mystery Meat botched the pick ban a bit, and he banned Infinite Velocity when he actually had a strategy to go bar guests, instead of banning, I think he wanted to ban Nitro Valley or something instead. I can't remember the map that he wanted to ban instead, but it was pretty good. Neblime and the Shambler are going to meet each other with the Scouts, once again scouting each other last by the looks of things. And 2 Mavericks are... So, very similar play here as the opener from the last game. Shambler is going the same route, but he's going Hydrith Den. Now, he did tell me Oh man, I can't remember when this was. It was definitely before the tournament, but I think it was way earlier than this game was played. He said that he thinks Zerg should go Hydrith Den in 4-spawn maps, like as a general rule. And I'm interested in why he thinks that. So maybe we'll get to see some Hydra-oriented units. He's obviously going to be expanding later than Neblime, but who doesn't? We have just the one stockade. There's going to be very, very limited pressure here. Although it looks like with the 4 Mavericks coming, there could definitely be, an anchor dropped somewhere, since the Mason Scout is now en route to the position. We do have 2 Hydras on the way, and an expansion as well. So this expansion is timed perfectly for Neblime to deal a little bit of damage, and with only the 2 Hydras and the 1 Izira core a little bit further away from being able to do any pressure, it looks like now Neblime is thinking about what he wants to do, right? He's going to have 4 Mavericks, 2 more are on the way, and he's going to have the Mason. Now, the Hydras are here. They will start to heckle the Mason, which should be protected as a precious resource if it's going to be building an anchor, which it is. One of the Hydras has actually been lured down, so this is really bad for Shambler, who is not paying attention. And that is indeed going to result in him having a half HP, less than half HP Hydra. And he's got 2 Skither cores coming. The Izira core can absolutely frontline here, but he's frontlining with the low HP Hydra. The response time from Neblime is a little bit poor, and is now going to end up atrophying one of them. Does need to focus down this Mason. It's not pulled off the case, so he will eventually fall just before it completed, and that means that there's going to be a cancel as a result. But more Mavericks are here. They kill one of the Skither cores. This is absolutely paid for itself. He's not going to be able to execute that Izira core, but he came pretty close. And the really cool thing about this situation for Neblime is that he scouted the air units. He killed one of them. That's a total of 100 gas loss between the 2 Hydras and the Skith. And obviously he forced out more military units at a time where ideally Shambler would be building workers. So at this point, Neblime is actually ahead in workers versus Zerg. He's adding a Watchdog on his production. He's got double Watchdog over here by the Ministries. The Skither cores will not be able to penetrate that. And with the Wraiths on the way as well, it looks like maybe he's going to be thinking about doing his own air harass, thinking that, well, Shambler just riposted my ground attack. He's probably not going to be thinking I'm going to pivot into air. But he's only got the 1 star pad, so the production is going to be a little bit slow. Adding an anchor over here for his natural. And, I like this because he's kind of respecting the range of the Hydras, are a little bit different than the Quasis. So I don't know why these Masons are here, but hey, I guess they're here to try to protect against something like that happening. He's building a Cyclops! Neblime built a Cyclops! I can't believe it. Neblime is surely destined to win this game now that he... Oh, it died. Well, a little bit unfortunate timing there as he pulls the boys to try to deal with that. The low HP Izira core wasn't able to regenerate too much, and now this attack will indeed be cleaned up. Of course, these Watchdogs zoning away any attempt from the Skither cores, which are now being used to dissuade Wraiths from attacking. Trying to do some damage. Trying to chase him down. This is actually, yeah, they have their 3 range at this point, but I believe this is before I increase their damage to 5. So, with that being said, hey, the 1 borrowed Hydralisk. We love to see it. Anchor repositioning itself. The units did end up getting unloaded out of it so that he could respond to that threat. He lost a couple of workers and lost a little bit of tempo as a result. We look at the actual count, he's technically ahead, but obviously Shambler has a bunch in the production queue, and this is where you got to be a little bit spooky, fighting Zerg, right? You have to be proactive on the map. You have to force them to continuously build, military units, right? Because otherwise they'll just build a bunch of workers and then build a bunch of military units, and then you'll be at a, decided disadvantage, right? We've got 4 macro hatches. The Wraith has been repaired and is dispatched once again to see what's going on. There's only 7 Hydras, and there's not really much in production as far as military goes, right? It's all workers. So this is the prime opportunity where if you had enough units to move out, if Neblime wasn't, saving for tech or anything of the sort, then maybe he would be able to do that. But he doesn't have any Vespine, so I can't really accuse him of saving for tech, but he definitely doesn't have that many units either. He's going for Goliath Cleric. Now, this is not a terrible build. One of the things that I like about it versus specifically Hydra is that the Hydras have lower attack rates than the Quasis. So I feel like that ends up being pretty good there for him. And yeah, definitely don't want to see what's going on there. Now, I'm not sure that Neblime clocked the position of this Hydra. It's providing a little bit of intel, mostly just, psychologically speaking, when the map isn't completely dark for you, that kind of feels pretty good. If we end up seeing an Anseal come at some point, that might help him out a little bit. The 1 in Wraith is now at 2 HP. And, of course, the Wraith second one is going to go ahead and join it. It's actually a small stack of them. There's going to be 4 of them in total. Neblime is going to take a 3rd base. Now, the interesting thing about Neblime taking a 3rd here is that it's mostly a force multiplier base. You need a lot of Vespine Harvesters to get what you would normally get. Like, you need 3 extra Vespine Harvesters to get the same yield that you would normally get with a Ridge and a Geyser, right? Because of the three ridges there. So it's kind of interesting. Hey, the Hydra's over here. It ends up scouting out the Wraiths at the very least, so it does get bopped. Not terrible. We have the Skither Corps patrolling far and close, and the Hydras are now starting to amass. Now, this army isn't particularly scary yet. It is a little bit more gas expensive as well, so we're delaying our tech if we're Shambler. But there's Orcus Shroud also on the way, so clearly he's thinking about going maybe Hydra Gorg or Hydra Lakis. He said that he doesn't really like the Lakizalisk because he doesn't really like that leapfrog strategy. He just wants to win in an upfront fight. So I'm guessing it'll be Zorius, Gorg, or something like that mixed in with the Hydras. And Zorius Thoughts can absolutely kind of make things awkward for Goliaths, where, okay, this is with the update where they do have the faster attack rate versus ground. They got sequential buffs, one buff on Ascension 5's patch and one buff again on Ascension 6's. So they can deal with ground units a little bit more effectively than before. But you can see there wasn't really supreme production for this, and now here come the Skither Corps to add a little bit more fuel to the fire. The Wraiths are sort of pursuing them, or at least one Wraith was. I don't know what that's all about. And there goes the army. Kind of bopped here. Adding more anchors, desperately trying to hold on, and this is the back foot situation you never really want to be on as Terran. I think going Goliaths isn't necessarily the end of the world, but you don't need to. You need to not just do Goliaths, right? Like Cyclops are unironically pretty good against Zerg. If you had imagined like half of those Goliaths had been turned into Cyclops in terms of money, I think he absolutely would have been able to make that fight look a little bit different. Adding a couple of Vultures just to slow things down with their lobotomy mines. Instead of launching Spider Mines that deal 225 damage, you have lobotomy mines which stun targets, and that can be sometimes more effective. You can see there he stuns all of the Skither Corps, and the anchors are shredding them as a result. After the stun, you are also slowed, and if you just blow up the mine without the mine actually blowing up and stunning you, instead of getting stunned, you get slowed. So the slow is basically guaranteed in an area. Adding a third Fulcrum, more Watchdogs, no tech in sight just yet. Never mind, he puts down the Atlas. And what is the play? Yeah, it's going to be 6 Gorgs. Yeah, in the situation that Shambler's in, he's obviously got command. He's got map tempo. He's got, positioning. And the anchors are going to position themselves as well, reposition. And this army can be cleaned up, so it's not an impossible army. It looks like Cyclops are indeed going to be the weapon of choice. Honestly, even versus Gorgs, like, they can stack their damage up. But at this point, right, if we're just going to be... Are we waiting for more Gorgs? What is Shambler thinking right now? He's waiting for Gorg's Skith, it looks like. So the Skither Corps has definitely changed the equation. When you have the Skith, you do need some kind of splash damage because they can stack up so much and they are so fast. Whereas you look at the Gorgs, like... This amount of Gorgs can be destroyed just by the Watchdogs. He does have a Goliath and a Cyclops in here. If he ends up adding more Cyclops, then he can definitely do something even more, potent. But we're going to have to wait and see. This is a lot of gas expended by Shambler, so he's going to be further behind in terms of tech, right? He doesn't have... That's a Hatrosk. He doesn't have his Iral Iris coming. He's adding another Hatrosk. He's going to come in from the side. This is where we only have the 2 Watchdogs defending. A Goliath was over here, but what's the reaction time going to be? He needs to evacuate the Masons first and foremost, and it's not really happening. He's got a very, very... Yeah, I don't know. He had a very delayed reaction to that. And the Ministry's obviously not going to fall here, so Shambler just sort of taking out his anger at the fact that he only got to kill, I don't know, 15 Masons. And he's actually coming back in for more, which is definitely not something I would advise, considering he's just standing on top of a bunch of Cyclops projectiles. You can see how low his army is getting. Now, when one of them starts to fall, they all start to fall. So he really needs to hightail it out of there and wait for regeneration. And again, I think if 3 or 4 more Cyclops were involved in that battle. I know it's a bit of a meme that I advocate for the Cyclops, but that absolutely would have gone a bit differently. Because he doesn't need focus fire when he's up against Zerg. He needs, even the Gorg Corps, obviously, focus fire can be good versus them. But rather than focus fire, he needs crowd control. And it feels like he invested into Goliaths when they weren't really the option for you. There's going to be more units coming out of these Fulcrums, but I feel like at this point it's just kind of an overwhelming snowball. He does have the Tier 2, and my dog is protesting being locked in here while I do a cast over. Well, buddy, you shouldn't come into my room then. The Ministry's landed and is now going to be under duress. The Skither Corps Hydra combo will probably end up finishing that one off. Ever so slowly. And there it is. And with that, I mean, even his sort of languishing mech army is now under attack. Shambler has once again decided, I'm just going to keep building air units. And you can see here, like, the Gorgs are not going to be as effective in small numbers versus, like, Watchdogs and Anchors and stuff, so I definitely think that ended up going pretty well for Neblime by comparison, but he's still very much on the back foot. He's got his Palladiums, he's making himself some Madrigals, but that's the only Tier 2 tech that he's able to leverage right now. He's constantly been spending down to the wire. His Sentinel is down, or up, rather, in the air. Shout out to It Depends for the up dog. He knows what I'm talking about, and nobody else does. And now the skits are just going to get shredded by that. Okay, well, what have we normalized into? There's a bunch of Hydra Izzy, a bunch of Gorg. Do we still not have an Iral Iris? I feel like there's so much gas expended that if you could just hold on, then maybe Neblime can still turn this into a game. But he's once again being pressured here. The Madrigal and the Shaman combo is enough. This army was not going to be able to finish him off, I feel like. But maybe he had a bit of a mineral float towards the end there, and he didn't add more Sentinels. I think maybe that would have made him a little bit more confident. But like, his opponent didn't have he could have started tier 2 then at 13 minutes. But in theory, that still would have been drag-outable. I don't know if it would have been winnable, but it would have been drag-outable. Anyway, Neblime ends up dropping that match. That's going to make our final total 2-1 in favor of the Shambler. Well, Neblime is not looking too hot in some of these castovers, where he's narrowly losing out these series, but he did look a lot better when it comes to the actual games that he played in the tournament. So maybe he just is experimenting and practicing different strategies and seeing what's going to win him tournaments, seeing what's going to win him games. Either way, we are going to have to see what happens going into the next set of games. So stay tuned. Tomorrow, as of the time of recording, we are going to be casting those playoffs matches. So enjoy that, and I'll see you guys there.